Hello there, I'm John Stanley from John Stanley Associates. I'm based 4 hours south of Perth, but I work with 35 garden centres in 35 countries around the world on most continents. So I get to see garden centres and the trends probably faster than anybody else. I think one of the keys is yes, we've got to attract new consumers. One of the three things I would consider, well, it'd be focused on what I call the millennial consumer. Number one, I think a coffee shop is becoming more and more important in the mix. Number two, what I call a play barn or an area for children to play is becoming more and more important. And number three, I would focus on what I call patio living. People are living in smaller houses and apartments. And as an industry, we need to focus on that smaller unit, which means the categories could change. If we're going to get young people into garden centres, I think there's three things we've got to focus on. Number one is social media, and we've got to make sure we've got a proactive Facebook, Instagram, social media marketing program. These are major touch points for the consumer. So one is our social media strategy. Number two, the millennial believes other millennials, their friends, their relatives, etc. Therefore, what I call the blogger is very important. Someone in social media that talks about our garden centres, but is not an employed member of our garden centres. So an independent blogger. Number three, they've got to walk in the garden centre and be inspired by the displays. So we've got to build inspirational displays for that target market. So it's about social media, it's about bloggers, it's about inspirational displays. Urban agriculture. Urban agriculture is the new in word. Urban agriculture, yes, I think is a trend, but we've got to define what urban agriculture is. I think urban agriculture includes how we grow edible plants in our backyard, in our patio, etc. I think we've got to focus on the kitchen garden and the kitchen table, as well as parts of the garden in urban agriculture. If you look at all the research, you can see that that category is going to grow, and it's a huge opportunity for the garden market. In fact, the latest book to come on the market is James Wong's book, and James Wong, I'm a fan of James Wong, Grow for Flavour. So Grow for Flavour is James Wong, and that's the latest book, and it's rethinking what we're doing on gardening. So urban agriculture is a huge opportunity for us as an industry, but we've got to think about the kitchen garden, the kitchen table, how we grow flavour. It's more than just that in word of urban agriculture. Huge opportunity over the next 4 to 5 years. We need a marketing strategy on developing urban agriculture. I think we've got to remember one of the changes taking place, and that is the consumer is expecting the product to be delivered to their home. That is a strategy we all know about. They're expecting to go, to example, for a garden centre for workshops. So I think we need to focus more on workshops in garden centres. Now, for example, the research says that the average person can feed themselves on 20 square meters. Now, I know we're in Canada and we can't do that in the winter, but we as garden centres should be saying to people, this is how to feed yourself on 20 square meters. That's a huge opportunity in the marketplace that we should be looking at. Well, let's look at diversification, and let's first of all look at the strengths and the opportunities. The strengths of a garden centre is that we are seasonal, so we can promote the seasons. Now, in spring, seasonality is our big strength. Our opportunity is in quiet seasons diversification. And in fact, one of my clients in Denmark I'm working with, we actually call the quiet season the creative season. And we work with people on how can we be creative to develop traffic, consumer traffic in the quiet season. So diversification is important. That could include, well, first of all, we create experiences, not events. We create experiences for consumers, not events for consumers. If you create an experience, more people come than if you create an event. That's number one. Number two is make and take workshops where they can make something and they take it away. So we've engaged the consumer. Number three, we can look at renting space out to other organisations, whether that be for weddings. I've got a client that's doing funerals. We can rent space out. The other growth category that we've got to be aware of, and it keeps growing, is fairy gardens. And that fairy garden category keeps growing. Some garden centres are realising the opportunity, others aren't realising the opportunity. So in the quiet season, diversification, I think what we've got to do is say, this is the creative seasons. How can we be creative? Fairy gardens work if you understand the category. Fairy gardens is about engaging the consumer. If you're just selling the product, I don't think it works. If you're engaging the consumer, if you're building workshops with them, getting them to make fairy gardens, creating themes, the vegetable fairy garden, the native fairy garden, the edible flower fairy garden, it goes on and on and on. Miniature gardens, which is what they are, fits the target market. But you've got to engage the consumer. If you don't engage the consumer and his product on the shelf, talk to consumers. They don't buy. They're looking for engagement. As an industry, we're still focused on the plant and gardening. The consumer's focused on the environment and well-being. What we've got to start looking at is how plants help people. And we've got to start thinking about our consumer and what they're looking for. Most consumers are looking for a healthy environment in their home, in their garden. That means we've got to start thinking in a different way and start saying to the consumer, this is why you should put this plant in your living room. What we've got to think about is some of the research was done 10, 15 years ago by NASA looking at plant cleaners. We've got to start saying to our team and through our displays and through our point of purchase to get the message across on why the consumer should put that plant in their garden or their home. What are the benefits from a wellness point of view and an environmental point of view? We tend to focus too much on what the plant does, not how the plant benefits the consumer. The world is changing rapidly. My local library in West Australia is looking at 3D printers and bringing 3D printers into the library. And most American libraries, I'm told, have 3D printers. Now, how will a 3D printer affect the industry is a question we all need to be asking. And it's not just the 3D printer, it's new technology. For example, Christmas is a large category in most garden centres. I'll challenge everybody and say within 3 years, our consumers will be doing Christmas decorations through a 3D printer. So that category will change within the next 3 to 4 years. So what we've got to be aware of is how will new technology affect what we do? And that's true not only of garden centres, but of all retailing and all business. So if a 3D printer is coming into a library, how will the 3D printer be used in the garden category? We can make containers, we can make ornaments, we can make Christmas decorations, all using a 3D printer. So the key message to everybody is we must keep up with technology. Technology is changing rapidly. For example, I used to have a BlackBerry phone, and now BlackBerry phones don't exist. Technology is changing rapidly. As retailers, as garden centre owners, we must keep up with technology and ask the question, how can we adapt it or use it in our business? Trends are being led by millennials, my 35-year-old woman. And what we need to do as an industry is get more 35-year-old women into what I call the think tank area in developing our businesses. They can tell us what trends we need to be looking at, what trends need to be brought in. So rather than me, male, non-millennial, I think we need to be talking to the millennial and getting the ideas from them. They know the trends better than you and I do. We need to start bringing millennials in and getting them engaged as part of the think tank in developing our businesses. My advice, the one message is there's a lot of research, emphasis coming from speakers on social media and how to develop social media. I want to say consumers will come to garden centres if we inspire them when they walk in the door. If we don't inspire them, they won't walk in the door. We've got to build inspirational displays. I don't think there's enough emphasis coming across about building inspirational displays so people stop and go, wow, I want to come to this business. That would be my message.